So welcome everybody. My name is Mary Ann Johnson, and I'm the Worldwide Sales Executive for Web Experience Software at IBM. So it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you today. Our topic is information architecture, and we'll be talking about some technical things, but also some things that are important to your business. Like how do you get a good return on investment when you put a website in place? And how do you get a good total cost of ownership? So thanks for being here, and I'll let my colleague introduce himself.
And I'm Rob Enright. I work in the worldwide product management team for the portal Exceptional Web Experience Software, and I'm a strategist in that in a particular team. So I kind of been working with web technologies for about 15, 16 years. So from the olden days, we're going to start off with information architecture and looking at information architecture. And I'm going to talk about what it is, why do we need it, fundamentals, and basically look at what information architecture is and why it's still relevant today. Just a quick show of hands. Has anybody used IBM Web Content Manager? Is anybody familiar with it? Okay. And is anybody familiar with the kind of concepts of information architecture and what it is and why we need it? Okay, so one person. So that's quite good because two people. So when I was looking at this, there's a thing called the Information Architecture Institute. And when I started thinking about information architecture, one of the things that I found within IBM was we didn't have a consolidated deck about what IA is, right? And also when I started looking out, and this was last year, started looking out into the kind of wider market or the industry. Information architecture seems to be one of those disciplines that have been passed by almost, right? And I think it's kind of important to understand what IA is, and important to understand why it's relevant when you're designing a site. Now, and it's actually become more relevant with the onset with mobile. I think information architecture is more relevant, and also our kind friends from Gartner at the opening session talked about the user experience platform, and the user experience platform is all about how we make our software, our websites work in terms of exactly that kind of usability. So IA, I think, is an important part of usability, and I think the focus will come back towards IA because it does stuff that the other stuff doesn't, which is a terrible sentence. But so we define information architecture as the art and science of organizing and labeling websites, intranet, online communities to support usability, basically, right? So it was Richard Wurman was the first guy that kind of coined this phrase, and he was an architect, and he saw in terms of the issues in architecture, he saw that those issues could apply to any kind of discipline where you're organizing information, right? So he came up with this kind of idea of an information architect, and he defined it as being the individual who organizes the patterns in data, right? And also, what it's about essentially is drawing out a structure, a path to find knowledge, right? And I think this is kind of interesting because the way that you structure your website is absolutely critical to how productive your website is or how successful your website is, depending on what you're trying to do. So information architecture in terms of looking at your website and understanding all of the different aspects to bring together a path through to knowledge towards or to a task is absolutely critical. So we have these two guys, Morville and Rosenfeld, who've kind of worked for a while, but I'll go on to this slide. And they kind of, this is a kind of, if you look in any book on information architecture, this is pretty much what you'll start with. So we've got users, content, context, and the overlap there is information architecture. So you're looking at all of those different aspects, right? So if we think about kind of content management systems, the content is kind of a key part of that. Obviously, we all understand users, and I think this is one kind of area where people get maybe a little bit drawn towards kind of UX, towards the UX design and usability type of discipline is that actually it's take into account not just the users and what the users' requirements are, but also what the content is, but also the context, right? The context of what you're trying to do and why, right? And we'll come on to context. Again, if you remember the kind of the opening session, context is becoming more important, right? Particularly in the realm of now when we're interacting with a website through a mobile device, context is almost king, right? Context is the aspect that will either make your site successful or complete and utter failure. Well, hopefully not a complete and utter failure. So why do we need IA? Right, and SKCD, one of my favorites, don't know if any of you guys have ever come across it. I think it's a funny, cool, but I like this, right? All of the different aspects of the people who are responsible for the site, the kind of the sponsors and the stakeholders. What do they want on the website? What do they want on the front page? They want their department, or they want the alumni, the press releases. What are people looking for? Right, they're looking for a whole heap of stuff, and what's the overlap? Right, if you don't get IA right, then you're in danger of having a site like this. And if you're trying to sell something, or if you're providing a service, what that means is people will look at it and go, nah, they're going to go on to the next site. There's always a competitor. There's always another option, right? So grabbing people's attention and providing them with the information that's required is absolutely critical to the success. So again, why do we need information architecture? So understanding the user, understanding what the user's about, why they're coming to your site is critical. Managing scope creep, right? Websites, website design is a massively kind of, I think, misunderstood discipline in itself. When we start kind of thinking about what we're going to do in terms of putting a website together, you invariably get scope creep. And IA helps you contain that. It says, this is what we're going to do and why, right? And if you don't have that from a kind of the information architecture perspective, then you're always going to get scope creep. And if you want to deliver a successful project on time, then you've got to mitigate that risk. Also, validating the site's purpose and goals, right? I don't know if anybody, if you look at kind of the old school corporate taxonomy people does anybody do taxonomy as a living? Before I start to, no? Okay, good. So when you used to get corporate taxonomy guys come in and say, you need a corporate taxonomy of 20,000 terms, right? And they'd go, that's great, let's get 20,000 terms in our corporate taxonomy. And then you'd realize that you've got 20,000 items that are spread out across those 20,000 terms. So as you're navigating through, you're not, it's almost impossible to find anything, right? So if you've got information architecture there, you can say, well, we've only got 200 pieces of content. This is how we're going to structure the site to deliver those 200 pieces of content. So you need to have an aspect of the IA to kind of validate what you're doing. And also, I just added this up, and I've spoken to this, that this isn't just about user experience design, right? It's a step over and above that. And there's kind of various analogies that I kind of like to think about that I'll probably come to as we go through. So this is the kind of the role of an information architect. So they're basically building out the information architecture. And the next slide, so we're coming on to the kind of the fundamental side of it. And I pulled out the kind of whole heap of research in terms of putting this deck together. And these were some of the kind of sites that I used, including our kind of own IBM kind of methodology. But there is a full list of references at the end of the presentation. And if it's something that you kind of find interesting, there's some very good, relevant, up-to-date stuff that's coming out in terms of IA. So which I think is good. I think it's something that we need to encourage. So the way that I look at information architecture is kind of four key kind of areas. We've got the people, we've got the content, we've got the navigation, and then we've got bringing it together and the delivery of all of those aspects. So the first step is the people. Right? So we need to understand why they're coming to the site, or the site's objectives rather, and the business objectives. So that's looking at it from a kind of a high level. We would then kind of take it down to the actual users themselves, right? So we look at users' tasks, use cases. So this is kind of standard stuff as you're building out sites. Using personas. Personas are a very good way of being able to kind of flesh out, really, will your site succeed or not? If you don't understand your users, then you have little chance of actually meeting their expectations. We also need to look at the success criteria. And we also need to look at, do a competitive analysis, right? So kind of group this under people, but because it's all kind of people focused. But, sites don't exist in isolation, right? You have to look at what the industry is doing, look at what your competitors are doing. And I think that's a kind of a really key part of understanding when you're kind of developing stuff, is to see how you can, take your site and differentiate it from your competitors. So in terms of the objectives, kind of standard stuff, what's the purpose, for your site, purpose of the organization, what are your short and long-term goals, who are the intended audience, and also, the kind of, one of the aspects in terms of kind of this, probably more on the project management side, but the business sponsors need to be involved all the way along. If you've ever worked kind of delivering a site, and you've worked with a business sponsor who's kind of an executive who has 5 minutes, this is my vision, blah, 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 phone down, you never see them again, right? You have zero chance of making the site work if you've only had 5 minutes of time of the business sponsor. You need to make sure that they're involved all the way along, and actually their vision and their ideas are then articulated into the information architecture, into the site's design, and they validate that all the way through. So I think this is kind of a really nice summary of what I was kind of talking about earlier, which is that, you can see that, when you're looking at a user's context, right, understanding their emotional state, right, understanding their physical and cognitive states are all important in terms of getting into the head of the user, right? Now, this kind of sounds a bit strange, the emotional state of a user, right? Do I really care about the emotional state of the user? Now, there's a good kind of example, which is, say, if you've got an insurance company and you've got, say, life insurance, right? So somebody comes to the site, and obviously something's happened, right? If they're trying to find out, what's going on, their emotional state is going to be very different to somebody who's looking to, say, buy life insurance, right? And you need to be cogent of that, yeah. Also, the kind of physical state. Now, the physical state, again, is like, if they're mobile and walking down the street, they're going to be in a different frame of mind and want to interact with the site in a different way than if they're sat at a desk. Again, it's obvious, but it's something that we can now start thinking about and kind of like applying some of the kind of aspects of information architecture to. And then the cognitive state. So, who are your kind of intended audience? Young, kind of old, sort of which kind of segment would you be looking at, kind of education, background, those kind of things. So they all kind of like come together in terms of actually understanding your user. So obviously, they're kind of one of the key things is getting into the head of the user as to why they're coming to the site. And this is kind of, again, kind of standard stuff in terms of the industry. We take a look at, as I said, use cases. Figure out what the priorities are, and also kind of define tasks. We kind of normally group this, and then coming on to the final one here, personas. So using personas really helps in terms of getting into the kind of head of your intended audience. So I think the richer the personas that you can derive and the more accurate you think those personas are, the more likely you'll be successful in terms of structuring the site, structuring the information architecture to meet those particular needs. And these are these were the ones that we use in IBM. In fact, we have a whole whole stack. So whenever we're doing kind of product design work, we use those personas and we kind of will sketch out scenarios, and we already know them, right? We're a little bit, in our kind of demos, we take Heather Reeds or Dan Mizawa, and we just go ahead and use them in whatever context that we want. But if you look at development, they've got those personas. Dan is a particular person. He's got a particular background. He's got a whole history that we use to kind of shape Dan, and then think about how Dan's going to be interacting with the site, with the products. So coming on to content. So content is obviously one of the most important aspects of the site. And I think, we used to say content is king, right? So we used to say, the most important thing about a site is understanding the content. And I think that's still true, actually. Ultimately, if you want to buy a lawnmower, say, and you want to get some stats on how long it's going to last before you need to refill it with petrol or whatever, you need that critical information. If you don't get it on the site and you're frustrated by that, you'll go and buy the lawnmower elsewhere, right? So we still need to make sure that the content is delivered, the right content is delivered to the right people at the right time. So typically in this kind of session, the section of kind of looking at the content, we do a kind of content survey. We look at the functional requirements. Typically there'll be a kind of a content labeling, so we go through, structure the content in particular ways. We also look at kind of things like migration, so understanding how you're going to kind of migrate into the new CMS or into the system. And we typically do kind of content assessment. So we look at, often when you go to organizations, particularly maybe on the kind of intranet, extranet side, you tend to find the proliferation of content, and a lot of that content is out of date. And if you're doing any of kind of these kind of projects where you're kind of re-looking at what you've got, you tend to kind of find that you can cut out 80% of that. I've been to clients where they've had 100,000 pieces of content, and you go, well, that's going to be quite fun to do, and there's only 20,000 relevant pieces of content, right? You typically find it's really high in terms of the amount of content that you can actually get rid of. And then you kind of look at things like the site map. So kind of this more kind of traditional. You think about you start to think into how to structure that content and how to make sure that the user has a discrete and a nice path through to find the content that they want. So the content survey. This is obviously again going into a bit more detail here. We're understanding the type of content that's going to be delivered. We kind of describe the functionality as well, how we're going to, what functional pages are they going to be. And then we typically kind of will have a content inventory. And this is kind of one of those things that people don't like doing. It's like, does anybody have like a garage, or I don't know what the equivalent, like a basement, and you just kind of shove stuff down there? You don't really want to go down into the basement, but at some point you've got to. This is kind of like the content survey is a bit like that. We sometimes work with clients where they say, well, we don't really know what content we've got. And you're like, right? How are we going to display that content if we don't know what we've got? You've got to know what content. You've explicitly got to know every single piece of content that's going to be on the site, right? And you've got to know that type. And if you're going to generate new content, that's fine. This isn't a static system, right? But you've got to be able to identify the types of content. You've got to go into the attic and clean it out and figure out what's good and what's bad. Okay, so content labeling. So there's different ways of doing this. Post-it notes tend to be good. I think we should probably, from a technology perspective, evolve a better way of managing this than post-it notes. I mean, we actually do have a tool that IBM have been using for a while that is a kind of a data tool that actually will structure your information. So if you're kind of interested, then I can give you that. But I mean, there are probably some other tools out there to help you kind of structure that information, and then you use it. And again, I've seen kind of like spreadsheets as well, even Excel being used in terms of structuring the data there. Okay. And the other thing, this next one, prioritization of use cases, right? So when we're looking at understanding the IA, you will have a list of use cases, right? Likelihood is that you will not be able to develop out for all of those use cases, right? So prioritize. Pick out the top 5, the ones that are actually super critical to what you're trying to do. Don't just create 10, 20, 30, 50 use cases and say they're all equally important. Say, no, they're not. If you're a banking application and doing a transfer is one of those things that you need to do, then that use case needs to be top of the list there. Labeling the groups. So this is about, that kind of comes back to this cognitive thing with it. That if you've got like a toolbar across the top that's got 5 or 6 different labels, those labels need to be meaningful to the users, right? I mean, I've worked with many intranets, and sometimes, I mean, I know they're kind of in different languages, and I'm looking at a term, and I've got no idea what that term means, right? And it might be specific to an industry, but chances are that you've got somebody who's gone, oh yeah, I'll call it my secret page or whatever, and people will understand what that is, but people don't, right? So you've got to make sure that the language that you use in terms of starting to think about the navigation is relevant here. So then looking at the migration, if we're looking at WCM, we have a kind of quite clear migration routes into WCM. We typically use WCI, but there are different ways of doing it. And I think you have to look at the kind of end-to-end content process. So you start thinking about how you're going to create the content, publish it, and measure it, maintain it, right? So this is thinking about the longer term management of the site, right? Because if you've got what you want to avoid, if you've gone from a position where you've got 100,000 pieces of content and you've narrowed that down to 20, in 5 years' time you don't want to be at 100,000 again, right? You want to make sure that as you're going through, you've got a good set of content processes in place, content lifecycle processes. That means that you can actually make sure that your content is always relevant. Because there's another thing that will put your users off, like a thing that runs away very fast from another thing that they don't like, which is the fact that if they go to the site and the content's out of date or not relevant, that's a terrible thing that would turn your users off, and they will just leave straight away, right? Okay, so navigation, coming on to kind of navigation. So I kind of like, people often sort of, when you're kind of thinking about how to structure a site, you're kind of like, okay, people start with the kind of navigation. But I would typically start with the people, and then the content, and then think about the navigation. Because if you don't understand the content, if you don't understand the personas and the use cases, then the navigation is meaningless, right? And quite often in kind of modern web design, what people will do is they go to a graphic design agency, and the graphic design agency will come out with a brilliant navigation, right? If that navigation isn't relevant to what you're trying to do, it's meaningless. There's some pretty pictures, right? What you need to do is figure out the personas first, the people first, then look at the content, and then the navigation. Because again, if you've got a navigational structure that goes 2 levels deep, and actually you're trying to surface 10,000 pieces of content, that's going to be a pretty broad navigational structure, isn't it? So you've got to make sure that you do those first bits. So there are different types of navigational schemas. So again, we look at things like the global, always having a bar across the top, very common. We have hierarchical, contextual. We're able to start bringing in contextual information, and I think a good CMS will facilitate that. It will help you understand the contextual links or the serendipitous links. And also this final one, kind of faceted. So faceted navigation, I kind of really like. It's kind of, you see it on kind of some websites, and this is, we're starting to think about, we're dealing with more than 5 pieces of information here. If you've got a kind of a really small site, then this is kind of, it's still relevant, but it's more relevant to when you start thinking about kind of either multiple combinations of products or more complex services that you want to be able to navigate through. So faceted navigation. So it's about the findability of products. Another kind of one of the kind of terms that were kind of bubbling away, I'm not sure where it is now, is findability, right? Being able to make sure that your users can find the right content, right? Findability. So this is about the kind of findability of products. So we typically have filters, and we can use those filters independently. And you see we kind of apply Web2O kind of techniques. So as you select the filters, then stuff comes up, right? If you've got a big data set, if you've got a lot of content that you're trying to surface, using faceted navigation, I think it's really cool. It really works. I've seen it with our sites that we've built out work a lot. There's a kind of next kind of generation of faceted sort of navigation which is coming through. There's a site called City Forward, which is we've done for our kind of smarter cities, and we're using, again, web content management to do that. But the neat thing is that we've got different ways of navigating through. So basically, it's very pictorial. It's like a global map, and you can click on cities, and then it breaks down. And that's kind of using that same kind of model of being able to filter, except it's kind of presenting it rather than a drop-down list. It's actually presenting it as a map. And I think go have a look at that site. I mean, we can give you the site name again, or even bring it up at the end. So this was just an example, Volkswagen, where you've probably, hopefully, you've kind of gone to a car site, and you can kind of click on, do you want a sports car, a family car, 4-door, 2-door, do I want it to be diesel or petrol, or the local equivalent. And then coming on to the final thing, which is the delivery. So, and I think in terms of the delivery, this is where I see the kind of information architecture working hand in hand with the usability in the design of the site. So obviously kind of the design is very important, and also kind of tied into the design now with kind of user experience design is the usability aspect. I still see them as discrete, right? CSS and images do not provide usability. Usability is about understanding the user and how they interact with the tools that you've got on the site. And then the information architecture is another aspect to that. It's independent from, because it's tied to the content, right? If you can have a site, or you can have, like, say, a tool that's usable, but actually when you apply it, say, to your content, it actually becomes meaningless. So I think you need to make sure that you kind of tie those three aspects together. So when we look at the delivery, we typically do things like wireframes. So we're kind of build out the site, and we build out kind of paths through the content and use design sketches and mock-ups. So again, this helps kind of, particularly with the line of business, helps them visualize what they're getting, and also prototyping. So I think that all of those aspects are kind of really critical in terms of the way that you go from what's in people's heads to actually building out the design. And I think we've got some more tools kind of coming through. I don't know if you've seen Marketer, but it's kind of like a visual tool for Dojo to build out sort of like Dojo-rich interactive sites where you can kind of drag and drop stuff. I think that kind of prototyping tooling is coming on quite well, and I kind of would encourage you, if you're looking at kind of doing the design, then using some of that tooling, not just PowerPoint, right? It's better if you actually get down to it and use one of those prototyping tools. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Miriam.
Thanks, Rob. My part of the presentation was the fun part. So Rob, I know Rob enjoyed doing the technical part of the presentation on information architecture, but I really got to look at some sites that have used our tools. And so I had a lot of fun just looking at the sites, and I encourage you to do that as well, so that you can poke around and get some good ideas about things that you might want to mimic as you put together your solid information architecture, again, for that good return on investment and good total cost of ownership. So one of the sites that I had a lot of fun with was the Tony Awards. Now, you may have looked at sites that are put together by the team that put together this site. So if you've looked at sites like Wimbledon or the US Open Tennis or the Masters Golf, they're all put together by the same team that runs all of those major events. So they know that they have to architect their sites for a high volume of site visitors at the moment when the event occurs. Part of the total cost of ownership is that they also have to give enough screen real estate to the people who are sponsoring their site. So that's another one of the challenges that they face. And then another challenge that they face today is that they're living in a world where people have grown used to things like American Idol or Dancing with the Stars. People are used to voting on things and becoming socially involved with this kind of website. And so that was another challenge. So each year, the events team that puts these sites together adds a new bit of technology. And so their focus over the last few years has been on making the sites more social. So they've got that strong foundation that they've been building on for many years. Another aspect of information architecture that you want to make sure that you built things so that you can snap on new parts as you need to do that. You don't have to tear down the whole structure in order to add on and to make things even more relevant for today's users. So they've had that challenge of being true to their mission. So the mission of the Tony Awards is to provide recognition to the Broadway shows and to the great writers and performers who put those shows together. So as they work to honor those, then they want to put together a site that honors that tradition, that gives some recognition to the history of the awards, but then it also makes sure that it's staying on the bleeding edge so that it can deliver all the capabilities that people expect from a great website. Now, one of the wonderful things that you'll experience, so I encourage you to go to the site, and one of the things that it lets you do is it allows you to vote. So you get to actually participate in a game so that you can drag your favorites over to the place where you get to vote on your favorite shows for the different awards that are being given out. And so as part of this, we'll go ahead and look at a little bit more of it. So is it the middle one? How do I flip?
Right.
The right one. Okay, thank you. So they have a banner ad in the middle, which is something common that a lot of people are doing nowadays. And so this particular banner that shows up is the one that leads you to that gamification. So when you see this predict the winners, you can click on that. It'll take you to the game where you can drag the different shows over and vote on them for your favorites. Now, in addition to that, we also see that they've got the search capabilities. Rob mentioned you've got more than 5 pieces of content. You've got a lot of content on your site. And one thing that people have been giving us feedback on is that to put a lot of energy into making sure that the search engine is working well is a good best practice. So they're recognizing that taxonomy is not what it used to be. So people are allowing more free-form tagging. They're having more user-generated content. And so to really have that robust search capability that allows you to find what you need to is one thing that most of the sites are putting predominantly on the front page. Now, in addition to that, we've got front and center our ability to look at those social capabilities. And then on this one, we've also got a countdown. So in 19 days, the Tony Awards will happen. So you can look at the site today. It's going to be a little bit different than at the moment when the awards are actually happening. With this, we've got mega menus. With those mega menus, it does allow you to kind of follow that 3-click rule. So can my site visitors get to the content that they want to get to in 3 clicks or less? And a lot of studies have shown us that if they can't, like Rob said, it's likely that they're going to go somewhere else. So they're looking for the content. If they can find it quickly, they'll stay with you. If they can't find what they're looking for, it's likely that they're going to navigate to some other site. Now, as we drill down into the menu, then we saw that the nominees were one big area. So you want to know that the users who come to this particular site are really interested in looking at the shows and what the shows have been nominated for. So with that part, they designed the nominees page. With the nominees page, again, they're following that 3-click rule. So they know that one way to allow people to get to the things that they're looking for is to provide a categorized list. However, some people were interested in seeing the entire list without categories applied by the people that designed the website. So you've got a choice. You can look at the categorized list. It's a little bit a more condensed view, or you can expand it to get the full view. And then another thing that they have on the site is they actually have the ability to see a text-only version of the site. So if you think about a lot of people who are coming to the site, there are journalists, there are people who are writing articles about the shows that have been produced over the last year. So they may have an interest in that text-only version of the site. So it's specific to the set of users who are interested in this site. Now, again, as we look at each of these screens, you're going to see that great amount of screen real estate dedicated to the sponsors. So the sponsors are responsible for producing the awards show, for contributing to the awards. And so in this particular site, their return on investment relies heavily on making sure that the sponsors have the screen real estate that they deserve. In this one, they've also provided that summary view, so it's hover text, so it allows you to easily see what you're looking for on the site. Now, as you drill down into one of the shows, then they begin to realize, people are interested in a specific show. It's likely that they might want to buy tickets. Again, return on investment. Let's make sure that we get the money where people want it to be. Not only are people thinking about buying tickets, but they're also thinking about the assets that go along with that show. So I'd like to look at the script for this play. I would like to, get the soundtrack from this play. And so they're able to really think about that return on investment and using the site as a way to generate revenue for those shows. Again, they've got the social capabilities, the advertisements on this page as well. Now, one of the areas that they have really taken advantage of on the Tony Awards is the ability to deliver lots of multimedia assets. So that has become hot over the last few years. When they started out with the website, it was pretty hard to do some of the things that they do now, but we've all grown to expect more multimedia when we look at websites, and they have grown their site to warm up to that appetite that people expect from the website. So a lot of storage of multimedia, and again, another sub-menu that allows you to navigate through and see the different kinds of media that they have. Again, on this page, as I think about, people have navigated to this page to look for multimedia, then let's find ways to give them that summary information again, so they have that 3-click way to get to things. And of course, they have that social capability right in front of you throughout every page that we looked at. And when you do click the social link, then it takes you to their Facebook page, and you're able not only to look at things and to interact with them, so you can share your information on the Facebook page as well, but then here's the game where you can actually take the shows, drag them over, vote on them. You can share these with your friends so that you can enlist others to vote for the shows that you want to win. And in this case, you're just kind of predicting what you think the winners will be. So again, the way that they have put things together, allows them to have a great return on investment and a great total cost of ownership because they have been paying attention to the things that Rob mentioned. So they know who their site visitors are, they know what kind of content they're delivering, and they know the context that people are looking at the information in as they view the website. So the next example, Rob mentioned a banking application, and the Australia-New Zealand Bank is one that had their users in mind as they designed the website. So not only did they need to provide that great web experience, but they also knew that they needed to do it in 14 different languages. So as you think about all the languages across the Asia-Pacific region, then those are the languages that their site visitors expected to see on the website. So when they put their personas together, they had to think not only about what people were doing, but where they were coming from, and not only the language expectations, but also the localization expectations. So some cultural differences that they may encounter as well. So as they put their website together, they needed some easy tools to keep it up to date. And so they did rely on templates for getting the website up and running quickly and for giving people ways to update the site easily. Now, when they thought about their users, they thought about the things that the users might be trying to do. So one of the things that you can get to from just about anywhere in the website is that ability to search for a location. And so you can see that we did a search for locations within a certain area, but they've also done a great job with the visual aspects. So they are showing not only the branches, but also the locations of the automatic teller machine. So you get a different look for an ATM than for an actual branch. And then you're actually able to drill down into this. So again, they're using hover text, keeping that free-click rule in mind. So with the hover text, you've got the detailed information about, where that branch is. So if you want to drive there, you can actually see the physical address. You've got the hours. You've got the other information about how to contact them. But then you can even get a street view. So if you want to know, is it crowded, there at this time, then you can actually use the map to drill in and see the actual physical location of the branch. Now, as we think about the other things that people want to do, so they have found a branch at one point or another, found an ATM, they've established an account with the bank, then those people want to manage their money. So they may be looking at their different accounts within that website, or they may be looking at the activities that they performed with their money. And so one of the things that they might want to do is they might want to look at the transaction history. And so for this, the navigation, they've actually used radio buttons, again, to make it easy. So they've used the tabbed approach across the top. And then within the tabs, you can toggle the radio buttons to determine what shows up underneath. And so if you are looking at the different activities that you might want to perform, again, they're thinking about the return on investment, the total cost of ownership, and how they can reduce their costs. So if they can allow you to easily do things like pay your bills online without standing in line and taking up a human being's time in the branch, then that can actually save them money by giving you the tools. It can also increase their customer satisfaction. So it gives them a way to lower their costs and increase customer satisfaction by supplying you the tools that you need to manage your money. Another quick way to allow them to reduce that traffic inside the bank and therefore reduce their costs, also to increase customer satisfaction, is to give you an easy way to transfer funds so you can move the money from one account to another really easily. And then finally, if you've ever been part of a banking institution, then you know that traveler's checks are just a clear profit for the bank. So it's a very easy way for them to charge you a fee for, a service that's very easy for them to deliver. So to allow you to do that at an even lower cost for the bank, to let you do that online is a win-win for them. So they're able to give you the forms that you would need to fill out on the website so that they can, again, reduce their costs and provide that easy return on investment for their website. The next one is another fun site, and this one is the Juventus football team. And so that football team knew that they needed to revamp their website. They needed to come up with a way to interact with their site visitors, and their particular users are really gung-ho about their team. So it's not only a website, it's more or less a family of people who have come together to cheer for their team, to really be proud of their, being a fan of the Juventus team. Now, go ahead.
Is anybody a football fan? Do we have any football? So yeah, so Juventus won the league in Italy. So this site got massively hit, actually.
Yeah.
And as they were, and we were. One of the nice things about building it out on our technology was it was able to scale, and we scaled it nicely.
Yeah. So similar to the other event sites that I mentioned, you're going to have those huge peaks at moments when those events occur. So if the team happens to be in the midst of a tournament, or if they're on a winning streak, then you may have those great peaks in their usage. So you can see some of the statistics there. 11 million page views per month, and a Facebook load of 21,500 hits on the Facebook page. So along with this, they knew that it's this sense of community that they wanted to build up with their website. So they did come up with this idea of using, the WebSphere capabilities for making this a highly scalable solution. They also wanted to implement that single sign-on across the different social networks. So those were some of the goals that they had in mind as they thought about that big overarching statement. What is the mission? What is the purpose of the website that we're trying to fulfill for these particular users and this particular content that we have? So you can see that somebody might start out, in this example, with their Facebook access. And so as they come to the Juventus Facebook page, then that actually allows them to easily navigate to the Juventus.com page. Along with that, as they're working in Facebook, then you can see that people have posted links. They also have the ability to interact with communities. Now, when you get to the official site, then some of the things, again, that people may want to do, they may want to purchase tickets, they may want to interact with the merchandise related to the team. Maybe you need a shirt or a hat, some of the merchandise. And so, again, they're thinking about that return on investment for the site. And on this one, you can see that right there on the website, they've got the ability to look at the multimedia, so that you can actually look at videos that people have uploaded or videos that are on the actual Juventus homepage. And so this menu is kind of neat. If you go to this one to try out and see how they've set up their information architecture, then this menu will actually follow you down the page. So it's quite a long page because it has so many pictures on it. But as you navigate down the page, the menu will follow you down. So it's pretty neat to look at this one. And within the site, you'll see lots of opportunities to navigate seamlessly from the site itself to the different social sites. So from the Juventus.com to Facebook to Twitter to YouTube. And that's part of what they had in mind as they wanted to maintain that community feeling and to really make their website part of the social sites that they've also partnered with. Here's the part where you can look at things like the ability to get a credit card for your team. And so with that, again, they're thinking about that return on investment. What's another revenue generating mechanism that I can put in place on my website that can easily provide me some additional revenue in a very easy fashion? And you can see the different levels that are available there. So the stadium, the premium, and the premium international levels. Again, with the different merchandise that they give you to reward you for the different purchases that you might make. Now, if you're a fan, then you always want to think about what matches can I attend. And so that's another thing that they've given you easy access so that you can actually, find the schedule and find the way to get tickets. And then finally, you may want to read about a match. So you can get the details of the match, and you've got all the links that you need to navigate, to the different areas that may be of interest to you. Now, in addition to the site itself, the Facebook page, the YouTube page, then they've also got a link to the equivalent of Ticketmaster. So in this case, it's a little bit different. So they're actually just linking you out to the place where you can buy the official tickets. So as we looked at those examples, then we saw some common threads throughout. So they were not only looking at the things that Rob mentioned, like the purpose of the site, the mission of the site, the users, the content, and the context, but they were also thinking about things like improved customer confidence, the ability to allow people to navigate seamlessly from their site out to other related sites. Now, we did have some great statistics. For example, the Australia-New Zealand Bank told us that allowing them to set up the site the way they did gave them a 90% increase in productivity. So that was not only because of the great information architecture, but also because of the easy way that they gave themselves to maintain the site. So they separated the presentation layer from the content layer. They allow the business users to update the content. And so it's a great statistic that came from that particular customer. Now, some of our customers have told us things like, that they've saved over $2 million on things like hosting and maintenance costs because they do have a common solution across multiple web properties. So that ability to publish not only to the traditional website, but also to the social sites and to publish simultaneously in a seamless fashion, then that's another way that people drive their costs down. Again, looking for that total cost of ownership and ways to streamline things, to gain efficiency, and to make sure that you've got a good financial model as well as a good information architecture. Here's another one that over $500,000 of startup and deployment charges were deferred by migrating to a common solution. So in that particular case, the customer had been maintaining multiple web properties. They were able to move to a common infrastructure, and that allowed them to reduce their costs drastically in that particular situation. So you can see lots of other great statistics, and if you're not doing things like managing the number of minutes that it takes people to do things, you might want to do that because it can give you some good bragging rights when you go to upgrade your websites or to add on additional functionality onto your website. So if you can make a case to your management about the time that you'll save by putting some of these kinds of implementations in place, then that can help you get more funding for the projects that you have in mind. Let's see, I think we've covered most of these. So improving customer interaction, improving branding, all of those are things that people have told us about. For some of the rest of these, we didn't do the in-depth case study of the information architecture and how they put things together, but I did want to share them just because they had such good things to say. One example was the BMW Italy site, and they used our Portal Now capabilities. So that's the capability to use a templated approach to put your website together based on best practices that have been put together from real-world scenarios. And in this particular case, the BMW Italy team, they didn't have control of the big corporate BMW site, but they needed their own country site. So they used this templated approach to quickly put together this ability to share documents and get information out to their particular country site. That was one way that they achieved a great return on investment, was by relying on the templates for putting the site together quickly. Another example is Cardiff University, and that was one of the first sites to combine the traditional portal capabilities along with the social capabilities. And so that was one of the ways that they saw a great return on investment, was because they knew their site visitors, those students who were using the website, they knew what the students expected, and again, they needed to build that sense of community amongst their site visitors as well. So they achieved a great return on investment and a lot of user benefits by putting the social capabilities together with the traditional web-based approach. And then this Great West Flooring, they achieved a great return on investment by getting rid of their VPN clients. So because they were delivering the information securely on the website, then people no longer needed to log in to a special client, and that saved them around $900,000 the first year because of what they were able to do. So I think that actually is telling us that our time is up. So, and it's right here at the right moment. So so that was perfect timing. So are there any questions? Rev, did you have the other things that you wanted to add?
No, that's fine. So thanks very much.
Okay. So we appreciate your time today, and hope that this has at least given you a few ideas of things that you can go and explore. And we encourage you to come up. We'll be here for a few minutes afterwards. So thank you very much.